Okay, g'day there. I got, well, before this sad state of affairs reared its ugly head, and I was doing all these demonstrations in the classes I run, and then when lockdown, I asked the people in my classes to send me suggestions of things they'd like to see. I got a letter from one of the people in classes and asked, Kevin, could you please do a city street with the likes of Dan McCaw? Yeah, fine. I like doing them. I don't do them in my own work, but I still like painting them as demonstrations. That's what I do. Street scenes. Squidgens of them all around the world. Squidgens of artists love painting street scenes, whether they take a photograph or they sit there. In here on the outskirts of London where I am, I know within London and all the environs, etc., there are any number of people who paint street scenes. There are obviously the ones that if you go on Pinterest or Google and put in images street scenes, you get the more notable ones coming up, hence Dan McCaw, Andrew Gifford, Jeremy Mann. There's a guy here who lives in Bath called Pete the Street. And then there's another very famous one that Ken Howard paints streets of London and everywhere. Anyway, get on with it, Chapman. Right, okay, so these two pictures up here, one a famous view of an avenue leading up to where the bridge houses of Parliament. This is a suburb of London. I don't even know where it is. I picked both of them up off Google or Pinterest, putting in street scenes of London with trees. Okay, so tree there and trees here, and these figures. Now, this one is an Andrew Gifford. He does paint close-ups. This is, I think it's New York, with all the dots and dashes. Okay. And Dan McCaw, I don't know where that was. I know that's an American one. Andrew Gifford is English, but he did quite a few of American cities. Jeremy Mann, they're just big skyscraper cities. Jeremy Mann has stuck to a certain limited colour palette here. Dan McCaw, the softness with the darks, and Andrew Gifford, the different colours. Okay, so what colours have I got today? White, yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna. See, this is System 3 and Galleria, okay? Now, System 3, they call that purple. I call a bit of magenta, it's up to them. And Phthalo green, Ultramarine blue, and Prussian blue, and a bit of yellow. The brushes I'm using, now, look, I've said before in my other demos, it annoys me that you go into a shop and they have stands of brushes, and they're even labelled watercolour brushes, acrylic brushes, oil painting brushes. Crap. And I emphasise it. There is no such thing as a brush that's applicable to a certain medium. You can use anything, fingers, brushes, rags. But, as I've said before, the art industry is a money-making industry. It wants your money. So, and same as sable brushes in watercolour. I've got half a dozen, but I love painting any brush. These I use with watercolour. And some of my Manky brushes. I love them, right? So that, a couple of lining brushes, and a trusty palette knife, and this Liquitex Professional thickening gel, which I've used before in the demos. I mean, you can, I think Galleria or System 3 do this. And I've added a little dollop, not much, to the white to thicken it up. Okay, and water and a spritzer. So, I have done a demo with a drawing about these relationships of perspective lines. Anyway, so here we go. Wet the brush. A bit of white and a bit of Prussian blue and a bit of what they call purple. A mid-tone, okay? Purpley, bluey, whatever-y. So, a bit of water. Now, I do loads of paintings and the drawings in perspective. Now, one of the aspects, I mean, there's not a lot of the marks that pertain to the perspective in Andrew Gifford there, or even here. But so I'm going to start with this purplish color and just bring down some lines. Now, a lot of people I've even seen in so-called top line artists, that this top perspective way up there, they get wrong. Well, it's up to them. So I'm going to bring down some lines and go up and this way and this way, just to get the balance of here and there and up here, and it turns to a bit of the blue shapes. Now I'm working between these two and so forth, and over here in the distance. Oh, by the way, a sheet of the same one I do. I think I should stop saying this before if you're going to watch some of my videos, but I think almost for the last time. This is Bockingford 425 grams or 200 pound cold or not pressed watercolor paper, over which underneath it all you can see the marks I did as another demonstration with where I've scratched it and lifted up. So anyway, now into that I'm going to put a little bit of burnt sienna. Right, now look at that beautiful color. Right, now I'm going to go up here and I'm pushing the brush up and down and mushing it in these shapes up there and up here. Now a little bit more burnt sienna and a bit of ultramarine blue. Okay, bluey, greeny, like that. I'm going to put down here as a wash and a cross to get the marks going, get the under a bit more of that so-called purple, burnt sienna, blue, quite dark, get the darks in. Doesn't matter, it's all quite watercolory, these shapes. Now a bit more of the purple. Well, I mean, I like colour. So I'm going to start to there, which way I'm going to do that. And I'm going to put a line there. And that's the edge of the road. Or that, so I'll merge that in. Into that I'm going to put beside it some yellow ochre. And now I'm putting that brush aside and I'm picking up this, which was a really bad, you wouldn't want to use it, house painting brush, 1 inch. And then this Manky brush. So I'm going to let that settle, and I'm going to take a big hunk of white and put that up where the sky is a bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of that colour into it, right? So a soft grey colour. A little bit more of that, just to get a thickness going. Now, I'm putting thick white in. Hopefully you can see how thick it is. So now I'm coming up to the edge of these buildings. So I'm deciding which of these facades, there or there. I think I'll go for a bit of both, right? So I'm going to go up there and down there and mush it a bit, and up here a bit and down there and up there and a little bit in there to soften. Now I'll take the larger brush and a little bit of the purple into there and a little bit of sienna, and I'm going to pull down this dark up and down just to get this all covered and mushy. Bit more sienna and purple and mushy up there and across here and into the footpath, a little bit of blue across down there, up here, lovely, lovely. All these marks, okay. And that's, yeah, I like to get involved with it, with all these shapes. Now the distance, Andrew Gifford's painted a light purpley colour, and McCaw, there's a pale there, and Jeremy Mann very pale. And in these pictures, obviously, there's probably a bit of smog in there. I must admit, with the coronavirus, there is such a clarity of air, and especially at night. God damn, bloody beautiful. You don't get that sort of coronary bit of sort of smog in the air in a distance when you walk down the road, because all that is no longer here. Okay, now I've done a little bit of white into there, a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of their purple, and a little bit of that, and I'm going to half mix it, a little bit of Prussian. So I don't know if you can see on the brush there, this lovely Manky brush. So I'm going to go up here in the distance, there are trees, and here there are buildings. So I'm going to go across and up and down. Now, even with my finger, I'm going to pull some shapes and dots, and there's a building there, and maybe it's got a top knot to it, a little bit of burnt sienna, and I rub that, pull it up, and I'm going to pick up the palette knife already and take a bit of sienna, a bit of blue, a bit of white, half mixed. Okay, and I'm going to go there and across. Now, white and sienna and blue, half mixed, maybe even a little bit of the purple. I'm going to tap here, pull it down, and then tap and pull it across. And I want that to almost disappear there. Little broken marks. Here, the houses or buildings behind the tree. I can see it's a softish, burnt sienna-ish, little bit of bluish. And I'm going to pull down from here. I take the palette knife under here and I put it on this slope, and I'm going to pull it down. Not enough paint. There we go. Then up and down. Bit more. Hit it. And hit it. And up here, sort of make it disappear. Scratch. It's a light. Scratch it up. Mush, 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 mush. Bit of blue. And ultramarine is a very intense blue, whatever that means. Touch it, blue. Look, see these marks? They can be anything. I'm going up and across that way in this angle. Tight cross. There's one puts out there. Line. Scissor it. Look, the front of that shape. The marks. Now up here. Both of them. This has got a soft sandstone brickwork. So into there, a bit of burnt sienna. Right. Grey, soft grey colour. So I go up to here, roll it, come up to the edge, take the palette knife and mush it together. Soft. Take it on. Look at this angle. Excuse my shoulders. Up there. How tight it is. And even pull the palette knife that way and make an edge and tap it. And then up here, soft marks. It's this angle. Look how tight it is there. And this one way down. All of those. So in the distance here, it's soft. So take the palette knife and a bit of raw sienna and a bit of that blue, half mixed. So this is where the horizon line is, about here. So I'm going to go up into that. Now I'll put some white into that, up into it, and stop a bit. And then turn it this way, pull it down. Look at those pull. It's that colour underneath that, because I put there, that comes through in bits. Now I'm going to go a little bit of pale blue on this side and go across there and tap it. And all these marks, a bit like Dan McCaw, everybody, shapes, pushes it back. Now, a little bit more, maybe a little bit of purple, a pinky colour, right, into that soft colour. I think you can see all the mixing. So I put white into it, and down here, in amongst there, I put a bit of that pink. And now fill up that space, pull it down, go across. And now this other building here. Look, the horizon's here, about there, I think. I'll put it Yeah, about there. So I'll put a bit of pink. And there are lights on there, so I'll put a mark and turn it this way. Now here, so for that, and this building, a little bit of blue. So the vanishing point, and there is here, right? So if I turn up, this line goes there, right? Find the vanishing, not, you know, some parts. So now I'm going to pull that blue down and mush this. And it stops, and use my fingers for marks for that line hitting the vanishing point. Look, there, there, and then it goes up and comes down to there. So I'm going to put some blues. Most of these will be hidden by the tree, right? So I'll leave that and come down within this. Now, in these pictures, there's not a lot of windows, okay? That there are people, Richard East's, I think he's still going. I mean, very, very photorealist painter. So here I'm going to put a little bit of this blue-grey and a bit more blue on it to register a bit. It didn't register, a little bit of the purple. So I'm going to put some lines in there, heading down to this, quite steep. A few little dots, another dot, there. And a line of blue against the pink adds interest. So the Manky brush now, I want this bit to be a little bit paler, but I'm going to use burnt sienna and little cad yellow. So it's almost a greeny colour, so I'm going to sketch lines down. Look, lovely. Up there and down here. Now I'm going to put this colour with a bit of white across the street. Up. For that perspective. From that vanishing point. There. Well, there somewhere, it's not. And I'll put some blue across it. So, back to the facade of this building. A little bit of burnt sienna and a bit of magenta. I mean, you do any colour you want. Now, I like that little scuffle mark, but this is how steep that is there. There. And I'll bring some lines down with gaps for the windows. And then this one comes up there, right? So that one a bit steeper. And then down, and then another brush width for the windows. So this angle from there is there, right? And then this angle from there is there. Little bit of magenta along just behind there. So I'm going up, and I'll put a bit of magenta there. And maybe a line here. And up there. Steep. Now I want to blend them. I don't want to be too obvious to start with. So behind this, there's a bit of a market going on there, the same as down my core. I'm going to put the first little bit of phthalo green into that. So I'm going to stick that, a grey green up here, and a line down, and across. A little bit more of that green here becomes grey, so I'm getting rid of most of the white of the paper now. The shapes. Look at that light with the dark here. So, palette knife, not going to clean the palette. I'm just going to add that to the green and the blue, and I'm going to put a couple of marks with the edge. See, I pick up the roll of paint there, and I'm going to put a little glisten for a window there, thick paint in there, so it's just visible, a little bit more white, and a roll of paint. And on this angle there, up here, maybe there, a shape, and then down, a shape, and then less, a mark here, in there, and a mark. Now, at the moment, that's a little bit too, for me, a bit too, so I'm going to soften that. I've just washed the Manky brush, and I'm going to tap it, just to put it back out, and a few lines down, a few little bits there, little nick marks, a little bit more burnt sienna, a little bit of the yellow, some warm colours here, a few lines. See, I'm just alternating colour, burnt sienna and yellow. I want a little bit of warmth in this sign, so I do that. Look at that colour. So that's coming down a bit. I just picked up a little bit of white to make these shapes. Maybe a bit there, or maybe a line of that colour over, up and down. I'll go back all to this later. There are darks underneath, behind the market. It's the same here. Now I'm going to start with a bit of phthalo green and purple. Phthalo green and purple. Want quite a bit. So that line from about there, and I put these colour, maybe there's a bit of a dark there, and going over here, and some blobs, and behind there some blobs. I'm going to take this green across, put little dots, and a little bit more green. And if I use this brush and pull shapes down, there are things going on in the distance like they've all done. So there and here and there, a little bit of blue, ultramarine, a little bit of Prussian blue and purple. That gets a dark. Okay, so there's a line, same as this, leads in. So as I said, the vanishing point, and I've just pulled that one in the wrong place, but never mind, that'll all change later. So the vanishing point is about there, right? So I want this angle here, a bit of dark, and then a little bit of Prussian blue. I'll put a blob and a line, and up and down. I'm sketching now, and this stall comes out. I'm going to pull some lines down, and then there's a dark there, and something against the light there. Now I'm going to use magenta, or the purple, up in here, and some marks, and some shapes, and down, and sketchy. Now I'm going to take the palette knife, take a bit of tissue, take a bit of the light. I want to get some thick paint going, so whatever this light is, maybe a bit of the purple, so it's a soft pinky colour. So I'm going to put it over now, or down these shapes, and mush into it with some lines, and put some marks there, and pull it down into there, and a little bit of green in it. So I look at the angle there, pull a green and scissor it for shapes, and a little bit of burnt sienna up here, and scissor it, and a window, and touch it, pull it down to this shape. Look at that angle, shapes. So back here now, I'm going back over to this with the Manky brush, a little bit of the Prussian blue and purple. I'm going to sort of sketch some lines through there, and the little bits of the windows up here, in there, in there, and in there, and the angles down. A couple of lines here, a blob, a couple of things hanging out. Now I take the palette knife, go back to the light, not white, maybe green and purple, or I think it's more of a magenta. So that, going up to these windows, press a bit there. That's almost the last little bit of colour there, and an edge there, and an edge there, and there. So I've got the angle. Now back to the Manky brush. Which one? This one's a bit thinner and really manky. So to the sienna, I'm not changing the colour into that, little bit of yellow maybe. Sienna, burnt sienna, and a bit of magenta. Right, lovely sort of warm brick colour. So now I'm pulling that one down, quite watery, in between the windows and this angle, a little bit there, a little bit there. I'm just thickening up the paint, that's all. And a line there and some shapes. Right, so that's one bit. I'll leave that. So now, I mean, when you look at other painters' work that you like, or sort of you feel that, you know, I can learn a bit from that, unless they have an exact, you know, one stage through each development. I mean, it's always difficult, as I've always said, for most types of painting, what's underneath is just as important as what's on top. Okay, when you look at something like the Andrew Gifford or the Dan McCaw, don't go straight away painting the tree and so forth, but try and look into it, look behind it, look underneath. What is there? What can't you see? Okay, so now most of this is drying. That's the beauty of acrylic for that. Now a little bit of white. Where's my rag? A little bit of white into that colour. And notice I really haven't deviated, as I say, not a broad palette. Now I put a bit of white into the sienna, into that little bit of yellow. So I want the first bits of light on it's a wide footpath. So I'm going to take an angle, right, or this angle there to that, and I'm going to put a line, scumbled mark. Now I'm going to roll that sort of horizontally. So I touch it and lift it up. And maybe with the end of the brush, scratch a line. Now I'm going to go in there. The paint is getting thicker. And now the line there for the perspective. So I'm going to scratch it. And maybe take my finger and go across. There are little patterns on this. And then it gets wider here and down there. And then this angle for the perspective into there. Now I'm going to put a bit of green into that colour. Too much green. I'm not doing a green picture. Bit of white. Bit of raw sienna. That's better. So I'm just getting the thicker paint here. Oh, I quite like that bit of green coming out. Yeah. So across there. I'm not worried about the figures yet. Just thickening up the paint. Right. And a little bit of yellow ochre into that. And white. Right. And blob up the street. These lines. And look at that angle into there. Leaving some of the colour from underneath. So I'm going to let that dry. Now I'm going to put the first bit of thick paint on, and it's this wonderful bit of light crossing there. So not white though. So I take a big dollop of this and go into those colours so it's a golden light. I want a roll of paint on there. So there's the roll of paint. I'll do it again. I push it and do that. So that I'm going to put just about here, right? And I'm going to push it and lift it, go across and come down, just as that corner. And I'm going to pull my finger through it, just to mush it a bit. There it is. And the angle there, I'll scissor that up. And now I'm going to, this has got the texture, so I'm going to take a lot of white, mix it into that. Even half mix all this, and I'm going to drag it across the street from here. So you get a bit of purple, mush it, and a little bit of sienna, even some green, and mush it, and scissor it, and tap it. It's not a cobblestone street. Now the bit of yellow ochre into there. I'm going to introduce some light coming out from there and tap it for these shapes and marks, and mark in there. And I'm going to scissor up with that to make an impression of maybe railings and a line here. The angle going up to there and across some other marks. and another dark, so Prussian blue, except I think I might make it a magenta. And there's another shape there, which is this. Look at that. And then a few others of these, and a cross and marks way in the distance, shapes. So there is, I quite like this tent shape there, but I'm not sort of doing that. I like the mark. So a little bit of magenta, a little bit of ultramarine blue and white. Over there. And I'm going to slope. I've moved it further forward. I'm going to slope that mark there, take my finger and pull this sort of shape out. A bit mushy. Take the purple, just give it a couple of lines. We don't know what it is. A little bit of magenta out there, and I'll turn it to make it look maybe an entrance. A couple of lines through there. A bit of Prussian blue, another line, and another line tap. Adds interest. A little bit of burnt sienna, and I'm going to scumble over here and stop and scumble back, and a little bit of blue to make as a sort of a shape there, and a mark there, and a tap mark there. Back to the bit of purple and burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow, and I'll do some of that colour and make some shapes now. There, a few marks, my finger, a line, even fingerprints up the top here. I'm going to soften that little bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of that blue. I'm going to soften this building up there, a few marks, turn it over, scratch it, that big perspective up there, and a line down, bit of softness there, a blob or two with a Manky brush, lines, a little bit of the magenta and blue, some things there, adds interest, a little bit of Prussian blue, a magenta, maybe a excuse my shoulder, maybe a couple of little lines of daubs, and through here a little bit of that blue, another shape up there, a couple of marks of that. I'm varying the colour, a few blobs of other bits, a bit of white into that. There are sort of lines along here, there, and a little mark, a couple of things, a little bit of light there, a line, a few dots. These are little embellishments of marks and shapes that adds interest and pushes the city back. So I'm now going to take palette knife and this sort of little filbert, well, that's not, I haven't got the faintest idea, little so-called brush. Okay, some of the purple over there with a bit of ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna. Okay, so where's this trunk going to start? So I know there's a tree there, but I'm just pulling this trunk a bit more, and this one bends up here, so I'm going to take a line through there and pull one here, and then bend it down just to get the marks first. Ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and I'm going to scissor it down there to here, and sienna a little bit thicker now. And the wet paint underneath brings out how thick the tree, that big there. Make some other marks on it, pull it down. A little bit of purple, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of yellow ochre into the grey, all of these. So a little bit of a light bit there, a blob there, and I'm going to bend up another trunk through there, pull it down, and bend it and push it. And maybe one goes up there and goes there, and another one softly through there, and make some marks. Now, with the palette knife, Dan McCaw, this is a winter tree. This one's got a few leaves on it. So with the edge of the palette knife and a little bit of the same colour, I'm going to drag on the edge of the palette knife here. See, a little bit of sienna. And a roll of paint. And I'm going to pull in a few branches, right? Getting thicker and turn it. And a thin one in front. Give it a turn, pull that in, mush it. And a few little bits of rough stuff here. How many lines? A little one. A smear and one going out there. So I'm going to pull one down from there. And one across, bigger one. So mush. And then here, you're not going to have too many, or the kids will be getting up to swing on it. So a little bit of a bendy one there. Bend the palette knife, look, and it distributes different colours. And then maybe one out there, and a couple of floating marks. Now, yellow into that greeny, browny, sienna-y, coloury. Now, I'm going to tap that. See, I've tapped it, right? A little bit of magenta into that. So I'm tapping it, and I'm just going to tap over this, some leaf shapes. And tap. And tap. Big bunches of them. And a bit more here. And here, even hanging in front of the building across the road. A bit more yellow, a bit more sienna, and even some just floating. Scratch through. A little bit of white into that. So it's a very pale, wonderful. So I'm going to put some floating leaves out here. I know it's not in the picture, but you can add artistic license. A little bit of magenta, spots, marks. And then down here, there's a row of trees here. So a little bit of yellow into that green, into there. So out from here, there might be another tree here. So big blobs, and scumbling, and scratching, and a little bit of that dark, and a thinner trunk down there, and then some marks around it, shapes. Now this tree palette knife, I'm going to put a bit of light on it. Shapes and some leaves in front of the branch or the trunk. Tap, marks. So the trunk pushes that back. There is nothing wrong if you feel like it. As I said, there are some thin marks here. Andrew Gifford has got very thin lines. I'll take a little bit of the purple and the sienna and the blue and back to the sienna and put that through there, and one or two thin twiggy branches. Just brush strokes or marks, and don't forget some go in front of others. Marks. Now if I put a bit of white into that, a little bit of white, a little bit of maybe raw sienna. I forget what colours I'm using half the time, just automatically go for it. So it's a few little dashes. It's not light enough. Right, some little lines. Even few little dots of light. We don't know what they are. Floating marks in there. Maybe a little bit of sun has just hit that branch there. Okay. Now, figures. Right. Yes, they do take practice. Yes. So, the horizon line. As I said, this bloke's a tall bloke. You can tell his head is above the horizon line. So, in this part here, the same as Jeremy, man, people think about, I mean, this is maybe, or it's almost posed where this is just pick up the camera and hope and looks like the light and everything. So I'm taking this brush, okay, and a little bit of ultramarine blue and a bit of the purple, maybe a bit of sienna, and half mix it. So now from holding the brush like this, I am now holding the brush like this. So I am going to put that bloke, I'm not putting him in the middle, I'm putting him here. I don't want to copy the picture, so I'm changing it. So his head, I'm going to put a blob there, right? And it is a blob of blue and so forth. Now a bit of Prussian blue, and I'm going to put him there, and his arm, so it looks like he's reading something, so I'm going to put a bit of dark there. And I'm going to put a bit of magenta here and mix that all in. And now I'm going to put a bit of yellow ochre into it and sort of mix these shapes. Right. Now a little bit of the blue into a little bit of the green, into a bit of the sienna-y colour. So now I'm going to give his legs a bit of movement. So I come in there and down here. And now a bit of dark down there, so that it's crossed. So he's going there. Now he's holding something under his arm, so I put a big blob and scissor it and down to there. Now I'm going to put a bit of yellow ochre into that mixture with a bit of white, and I'm going to put a woman over that lovely blob. She's walking beside him, so I'll put that first. And then a bit of magenta. They're walking away, they're in silhouette. So maybe she's hand there, a little bit of blue and something there. So the contrast to there. And a little bit of sienna. And I'm going to pull her legs back there and scissor it to get a bit of movement. Right, to there, marks. Now, I'm going to put another figure here. So I look across and I'm going to put another blob and another mark and a shape and a scratch. So now I go across. See, these dobs and dots that I put are in the line of horizon and head. So I take the blob, put a blob there, and a line down, dot. So I'll take the palette knife. I'm going to put some light. I mean, some people call it chiaroscuro or so forth, but I'm going to put some light on the tops of their heads, right, with a bit of white on the palette knife. And I'm just sort of, see the little dot of light on the end of the palette knife. So I'm just going to scumble it across the tops of their heads, right there, and even that one there, just a blob. Now I want to tidy it up with my finger and tidy this up there. And I'm going to put the little blob. This is almost white. I haven't used any total white. I'm going to put a little bit of light on her shoulder there, and a little bit there, a little bit of light there, and maybe on his shoulder through there. And I'm going to put a bit of Prussian blue, pure Prussian blue, on the back of his head. And I'm going to blend some colour. Now you just want to get it thicker now, so shoulder out, down. This is thick paint now. Get a sassy walk going. Now with the palette knife, I'm going to pick up some darks and I'll put some spots and dots, a bit like Dan McCaw, Jeremy Van, and especially Andrew Gifford. Right, so some darks first on this line. So a little bit of dark there with this figure looking into the shop, and maybe a blob there, and some blobs of dark to bring out her head. So a little bit of blobs there, and a line, and a bit of a line there, and a scratch, and a couple of dots there. Now I've got the first bit of white, and I'm putting lights in there. So this is white, right? Little thick bits of white, boom, and a mark there, and a line there. And this is amazing. I love it when I do this. Little dot there, and a dot there, and a little dot, a line of light here, and a line of light there. Now with a brush, a smaller brush, that same one. Actually no, I'm going to take a palette knife and I'm going to put white here across, and white down the edge of the road there, and a bit more. I'm going to dab white into the yellow ochre for a golden light, and tap it across the road here for texture, and even drag it across up to her, and a bit more. I'm going to pull it across for texture and pull this line down. Now almost white around the figures, so I'm going to go there and pull that down here and up against the figure with a tree. Marks. Now almost white. I mean, other people would say you put it on first, but I like the edge, so I'm going to go around him and pull this down, and the other side of his shadow there, and his shadow there. So I've put his shadow on first. Now I'm going to pull that down between them, bit of light, so in there, and a bit of light. I'm just tapping it in for broken edges. Now I'll smudge him and pull this down, and up to the edge of her there, and a bit of golden light. So pulling this down and across it, and open it up with marks, even with a rag, pull that, and now that smudge shapes, marks, a bit of almost white there. Now I'm going to put another figure. Just wanted to get that place for the light, and I'm going to go back to that same brush, and I'm going to put another figure here. I wasn't going to, but I've changed my mind. So I'm going to put a blob here, and a little bit of yellow ochre and white right in the middle of that blob, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit of sienna there, a little bit of phthalo green into the white. Now I'm going to put a blob here, blob, and a bit of blue, and a bit of magenta up there, and a mark. Now I'm going to pull her, well, hopefully it's her arm down there, and her arm there, and wearing blue jeans, so into the magenta, and I'm going to pull her legs down there. Now I'm going to fill the space in through that. Now I'm going to take the palette knife and a bit of this other blue and go across the middle just to get some texture. And now I'll make some shapes. Pull that down. I'm going to put a bit of light on her arm there. Now a little bit of dark in there, and scratch that out. A little bit of mark, and I want a little bit thicker mark on her face. Oh, that's too light. Some dark. That's better. Quite abstract. And a little bit of red. And the shapes. Now I'm going to pull her legs down. I want it sort of, if you look at paintings of figures as not always expecting them to be totally and utterly real, right? As I said, look at this figure here, or these. Look, the marks. People try too hard. I am going to put one figure here, just standing in that space. So I hold the brush, and I put a blob, right, and a little bit of red down, blob, pull my finger and pull the legs down to there, a blob, and a shape, so that. Now, I'm going to put some dark paint on top of that. That's the first sort of exploratory mark. So I'm going to put a blob there, whoops, put a blob there, and there, and there, maybe a little bit of light, there, there, and there, and maybe pull my finger down the shapes to blur it, marks, even pulling your fingernails around up to there, shoulders, standing away, I sort of pull that down a bit, and up to there, shape. Now pull some marks, whatever's happening there, and shapes. So in there, I'm going to pull out a little bit of light, to there, put some light bits around the figure, and then pull it back, some smear lines, and I'm going to put a little bit of raw sienna, a little bit of that light. I'm going to put an edge there to sort of box that figure in a shape. That'll do. And now back to the light around the figures. I haven't used this brush. Right, white, yellow ochre, or sorry, raw sienna, and a bit more white, maybe a bit of that yellow. So I go up here, around there, and around this figure, and in there, a blob there, and there, and that leg back, around her leg, and her shadow comes down, and I go into that and mush it for shapes, and then a little bit of the light along the side of the road. I'm going to give it a slight curve up to this woman, put some light around her, so I put some blobs, and I'm going to put some blobs in the road and some other blobs here, and blobs there, and a bit of blue, a bit of ultramarine and magenta, and pull her shadow back a bit and put some magenta across it, different colors, marks, and this woman's shadow through there, sketchy, and this long down, break it, shapes. So little catches of light between their legs. Now, this woman here, she's got a leg going back, so I take a little bit through there and to there for the leg going back and the leg coming forward. The marks, the shadows, and a wiggly bit of light around. Maybe a bit of scumbled mark here, look. Cross marks, shapes, marks. So I step back now and just sort of evaluate some of the marks. So I take the Prussian blue and a bit of that, and I want a couple of the angles to there, so I put a mark and another mark to there, and pull a couple of bits down and a few finger bits, maybe a line there and a line there, a little bit of burnt sienna and yellow, lovely golden yellow colour. So I put a couple of marks of that, maybe one there and one there and one there, and a scrape. I'm just sort of going, thinking, where are these little bits of warmth going to be? A little bit of yellow. And mark. I don't know what it is. A little bit of yellow there. A little bit of white and yellow. They're always lights. A little daub. Maybe there, a line. Maybe there, a little bit of yellow. Oh, look at it on the side of that. Ah, doesn't that work? White and yellow. Right, these are the last little bits. A light, so maybe there's another light there. Way back there, there's another light. There are always lights in the city. Now, a little bit of white and magenta. I was going to pick up her shoulder, a little bit there and out there. A mark there and a shape. I'm going to put a little bit of light, which there already is, on that figure. Maybe a little bit of dark there. A little bit of brown on her face. Shapes. Some marks. That. So I'm just adding a little bit more than just the sort of dormant shape. A little bit of light on this figure there. Edge. And another bit on that. Maybe there's a bit of something in the window. So I do that yellow again on that angle. See, a little bit of white, pure white now on that shadow, across the shadow, white. This is thick, look how thick it is, look. And a mark. And then the shadow of the tree, which I missed. So I put that in. And each time that light, white into the umber, and I'm going to pull the light across the street there, around this person. Again, come up, very gently pull the light out and back. Bit of greens popped up here and there. A little bit of light out to there and around this leg. So, and a little bit more light across here. It's starting to dry, so it picks up colour. Look, that. And I'm going to put a little bit of light in the distance there. Little touch of light. It's getting quite thick. A little light there. A little bit of light interrupt there. And there's a line here of a mark. So I'll drag some white down and pull that out. A few marks. I like that, still that yellow and sienna over there. Just another couple of bits of that. Maybe a line there, a blob. There are, and so I take that angle again, excuse my shoulders, or do this way. Shape, all adds to it. Maybe a couple of blobs of other colour up here. Look at that, even that little bit of green up there. Little bit of light on the window there. And the darks in the shadows of the recess. Blue, magenta, a little bit darker. That's a thick bit of paint. And up there, shapes, marks, bit of sienna and magenta and white, with a couple of little, even spotty bits, look, that, in this roughness of the, whether it's pebbles, shapes, and a couple of marks going across there, probably grill there, and a couple of that way, maybe over there. So I'm going to go right across with some lines, horizontals, there, a couple of marks, all adds texture, and a line. Yes, there are pavements, and even up there a line, and across here there's something light, thicker paint, and there's a bit of light in the road there, light, and a little bit of pink there, and it's nearly done. Up to there, some pink line, bit of pink back there. See, that all settles it back. I don't like those too many, almost a pattern of leaves. So I'll put a few smodgy bits, that's not even a bloody word, and a few bits of yellow up there. And I feel just a bit more white and yellow of a, next to this tree here, some light, for some light on those leaves. Oh, ain't it pretty? Or maybe on the other side there. I mean, it does look an autumny colour, doesn't it? With all doesn't it? Pronunciation. Drag a few bits of light through there. So I do think, I always have the tendency, everybody does, a little bit of light on her hair, mark, maybe on him, shape, that person's in the shade, that one's there. I think I've got enough uprights, a softness there, and the marks. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off, mount it on there. If you like it, please comment, and when I am eventually online, YouTube, I think, please subscribe, etc., etc. And, you know, even though I've done a number of videos, I'm still relatively new to this, so, you know, clawing my way upwards. And I've just seen I want to do another vertical, a blue, just through there, a vertical little line, and maybe one a little bit higher. Yep, that sort of holds the three figures and stuff. And I think I'm going to put, with a small brush, a little highlight on the top of this awning, just there. Blob, 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 there, way out to there. Yeah, that's it. And see, there's always something. A little bit of white. I'm going to put a little row of lights, start there, 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 and there. Or maybe even put a round ring around them with a brush. And up here, there's a light there, although you wouldn't know it. A little bit of light on those windows. See, again, pull through that. Nearly done. And I'm going to put the angle, see, I look at that angle up there of this, of an angle of blue up there. That's about it. Could be slightly steeper. Okay, now I am going to turn the video off. Thank you very much. Okie dokie. Okay, so it's about just under an hour later, and it's fairly dry now. There are a couple of wet bits here. I'm just going to add, because I've put it upright, you can't see the palette now. I'm going to add some little bits of white, sort of roll them in around this figure and her skirt sort of, or dress swishing out. Some little lines of light, some white up there against this person's head, little things swishing out, a little bit of light over there, maybe a bit of light along the horizon line, just below that, the same as Jeremy Mann does, the same as Andrew Gifford and John McCaw, and there it is in the original photograph, or both of them, the light there. So I'm going to put a little bit of yellow light beside that person there, just to bring out their legs a bit, and to the other side of them a little bit of the, but I want little marks, a little bit of light there, maybe a bit of light here, a couple of vertical lines, doesn't matter if they're slight wiggly bits of light everywhere, bit of light on the edge of the trunk there, almost disappearing in against the sky. And you can see I'm just scumbling marks, that little touches here and there. It's not thin paint that I'm putting on, little bit of yellow, bit of white, little bit of yellow ochre, touch of green on it, lift it up, put a little bit of light there, turn the brush over, the branch almost disappears, and putting other colours in, a bit of pure yellow, cad yellow up against there, and there, couple of bits of yellow even out in front over this building, a little bit of yellow, little dots of white, and you could see that's quite thick, little bunch of leaves here, one in front there, not too much. I like that little bit of light, so a bit more white, and that, so some light in front. See how immediately pushes that grey building back, little dots of light there, even over that, the marks, pushes it back, a little bit of light there, mark, dot, a little bit more yellow and a bit of white in there, and down there, little bits there, bits of touches, blobs of white, little lines up and down, blob, even look, just do that, maybe a little bit of yellow there to pull across for the light, and I'll stand back. There's always something, always little nicks and little bits that you could, maybe there's a little bit of light easing through there. Oh, brush it, put too much water into it, take the rag, take it off a little bit. I haven't got much burnt sienna left, bit of yellow, bit of white, and just put a little bit of light. See, I'm rolling the brush to the mark in there, maybe just to the side of him a little, and maybe through there. Yeah, it's totally abstract, that shape. The mark just sort of eases it across a little bit there, not too much now, a little bit there, maybe a smidgen of yellow there. And when I stand back, you see that. Now, what I'm going to do, take a bit of white, find a clear place in the palette, a little bit of blue into it, and a smidgen of the purple. Okay, take some of the amount out, and just put some of these pure little bits of this blue up there, put a bit of white into that, just the side of that, push it back, some marks on it, a little bit of white more, thicker white, very pale, and a line, and a dot next to that yellow, a little bit of that blue, look at that, pull a line down, dot. You can go on until the cows come home. A little bit of blue there, a mark. A little bit more white. Maybe a touch there. Almost sort of the buildings are floating. A bit of yellow, soft blue there. Dot there, and a line. Simplification if you can get it that way. Now, with the palette knife, I like on the photograph this light coming down, so I'm going to scrape. You can hear if you can't see there. So I'm going to do that and sort of up and down, wider for the perspective and the marks. Yes. And a little bit of white next to it. A wiggly line for the movement. And in there, and a little bit between legs. A little dot of white. And down a few little marks. See, it just adds movement. But it's not real. A little bit there, a couple of marks. And the shape, so the silhouette of him, it's a her there. And a little bit of white. Oh, look at that thick, up to there. Adds to the movement into the horizon. Now, look. This wiggles and squiggles of the feet. And trying, I mean, I put the figure on. I knew I was going to put the light there, so I didn't have to worry too much about it at the beginning. And so that the white gives the edge. The same as here. I put those lights, not dark, but I knew I was going to put the lights around the figures so that these shapes, the blurring, the heavy duty there, the little blobs in between, they define the figure later. Don't be too impatient. That's what happens, impatience. I'm just going to put another vertical of blue, excuse my shoulder. A little bit of light into it, take it on the edge of the palette knife, and I'm going to put that one just coming through there. There to there. Just adds another vertical against that. So, and I think just with the palette, always is the hardest part sometimes. I'm going to put a bit of dark in that tree up there. Scraping that down, yeah, that just, you'd look up into it, and a few little bit more of yellowy greeny colour in there, little marks coming through, and that sort of makes you look up a bit, those lights. But now the scumbling, the different textures on there disappearing almost into a void softness. And in reality, the windows are light, but I've sort of left them through there. So, excuse me. I think that will do. Thank you very much.